stated? Because how can we say that there's no corruption if we're sitting here talking about criminal justice reform? Yes, you would not have to need to reform anything if there was no corruption. So that seems to be an oxymoron or a paradoxical statement to say that there's no corruption, but we're sitting here talking about, Judge Higgins said in the beginning, we're not talking about bail reform, we're talking about criminal justice reform. So you don't need to reform something that's not corrupt, or doesn't have glitches or have problems, systematic problems. So that I know authority protects itself, but I mean, we have to be honest.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Are they going to respond? Hi, my name is Keisha Yuri, representing Newark Anti-Violence Coalition and Westwood Victims Outreach out of the Health Department. My question is how do we reform this algorithm that we have in terms of the numbers and how they spit out? I don't know who created it, but how does that get reformed? And how do we, other than having these conversations, reform bail reform? Because it seems like we're having a conversation after the fact. So why didn't we have the conversation before bail reform happened? Why wasn't the community involved in the conversations before? It appears on a ballot. Do you agree? Do you not agree? A lot of people missed the question, and here we are. So how do we start to create some legislation, some ordinances or something so that we don't have to have these conversations after the fact? And the community is sitting at the table with you. The social workers are sitting at the table with you and in the rooms with you, because when the defendants come before you, they feel like they already outnumbered. Right. The police, the prosecutor, and the judge, they show up, they standing there outnumbered already. Right. They can't talk for themselves. And so how do we start to have a better conversation so that we start to see our defendants as defendants and people and not numbers?
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
So my last statement is, and I'm sorry, there was a young man that was here that we, the community, defended in court because bail reform didn't work for him. Right. That when he went to court, they brought up his background from when he was 15 years old. He's 40 now. So how does his background get brought up 25 years later and now he's detained? He's not a threat to the community, but because of his background, he's a threat to the community. His number gets spit out as 6. And you got petitions and people showing up in court and they pack the courtroom and they say, no, he's a danger to the community. We got letters. He's not a danger. He's helping the community, and his number is still a 6.
A letter from me.
A letter from the mayor. A letter from the community. We have petitions. We in court for a whole 10 months. And because he had a number of a 6, and if the bail was the way that it should have been, he had money where he could have posted bail. People need to be able to post bail if they can afford it. I don't agree that they shouldn't be able, they have to be retained because of whatever. But it didn't work in his favor. He missed time with his children. Same thing some of the people said. But we need to reform the algorithm.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And anybody on the panel would like to respond to that?
Please. Well, I just want to say I agree with that. You know, I was alluding to it earlier, because then you have the reverse of that happening. So it makes me, as you know, the mayor, begin to feel like everything is not right with this algorithm, or something else is happening upon arrest in the precinct, or something hasn't changed much, right? So you got an individual who obviously committed a crime at 15. He's a grown person now with a job, with a family, taking his kids, runs into an issue, has to be detained all of this time, right? So that's a problem. Then you get somebody who's caught with a weapon, involved in something, was just arrested and out on the street. So now I'm feeling like there's something that's not happening here. And I think the definition, we're looking at the definition of corrupt differently. Like corrupt, just like your computer could be corrupted, right? It just means it's not working properly, right? It doesn't mean that somebody is doing something purposefully, illegal. It means it's just not working properly. And when it becomes systemic, then the system itself becomes corrupted because it's not working properly based on whatever it is that's happening. And for centuries, I should say, and the reason why we have bail reform and criminal justice reform in New Jersey, which is a good thing, and most states are trying to do what we've done already, right? So that's something that people up here should be applauded for, because they made it to the risk to jump into this ocean when other people have just been talking about it. Bail reform, criminal justice reform, that's something that's happening here. Things that are happening in Newark with police community relations, all these kinds of things that we're experimenting with to make a system that is not corrupted, that's not biased. These folks are working at it. So are we doing it perfectly? No. There are people up here that are not doing it perfectly. This is or throughout the city, which is why we have to struggle with each other to get it right. There's nothing wrong with struggling with each other to get it right. But also you're fighting decades of a system that has worked in one direction for all of these years, that is consistently trying to work in that direction, and you're trying to push back against that to create something else to take place. And that's not an easy kind of battle, right? So we need these kinds of discussions to get to where we need to be at, because we don't need people victimized. We don't need to create one problem trying to cause another. Trying to stop another, right?
Let me ask you young lady's question, because I think there's a misconception. Judge Floria, the assignment judge of Essex County, that means she's the chief judicial officer in this county. TCA, Trial Court Administrator Amy DePaul, is the chief administrative officer for our court. And since 2015, they have been out making community forums about criminal justice reform. In 2014, there was a constitutional amendment on the ballot. Do you believe that individuals who pose a risk to the community should be pretrial detained? 68% of the citizens voted for that. So we did, I can't tell you how many hundreds of people in the last 2 years that these young ladies have been in this community reaching out to. The sad part is, as we talk about conversations, far too often there's only 10, 12 people in those conversations.
I criticize that, but I'm not going to get into that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, guys. We have one more question from the audience.
Based on what she said, I'm just trying to keep up. I honestly probably got about 30% understanding so far of the reform. I don't know if everybody else is, but
yeah, I share that.
Based on what she said, and then the mayor, like when you brought up the corruption, and like people, like I think of case law. Like I remember earlier, and again, it might not be the same exact situation. I thought the judge could overrule. So, and then there's been a lot of talk about adding the person. Like we're looking, it's not the computer, it's the person. So that situation, yeah, that is like, how did that happen if we have the PSA and then we do have the people? And I thought it was a good point that, okay, so now the corruption, like something is there, and maybe it's just we've been doing things the same way. And I know case law is part of the criminal justice system. You gave all these people this, and then all of a sudden we're doing things different now, so we can't really, I don't know, like I just think that the case law would be interesting, and maybe I wanted a clarification, like the judge could change that situation, or that was a different, like.
Short answer, anybody pretrial detained can have their case appealed to the appellate division as an expedited appeal. That means that they say, I disagree with Judge Grant. He should have been set free. They can go to the appellate division, and within 30 days, the appellate division got to decide his or her case. That's built into the statutes.
Did she just answer if that happened? I'm just curious.
Is there another person in the audience that has a question?
Last question.
Last question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
So this is kind of piggybacking on what the mayor was talking about, but this is to Prosecutor Higgins. You said that you want to root out bias. And I'm just wondering, is that even possible based on the past injustices, the current injustices, and the institutional racism that has gone on, in the criminal justice system and all throughout our country? So is rooting out bias the answer, or is accounting for the bias the answer?
Well, I think we need to have a system that's free of bias. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, and everybody should be working on rooting it out so that everyone's treated fairly. It's one of the issues. One of the questions was the computer, the algorithms, the numbers. Judge Grant will tell you that they look at it. There's been tweaks. One of the tweaks Judge Grant talked to you about is the way that the decision-making framework, meaning the release, no release decision, is handled, was changed to contemplate the possession of weapons more strongly than it was before. What Judge Grant, one of the issues we had January 2nd, 2017, when we started to look at this, individuals who had AK-47s, the decision-making framework was saying release. Let me repeat that again so we're clear. Individuals where they had AK-47s, the decision-making framework said release. The prosecutors went ballistic. We petitioned the court, hey, you got to change this. Let's be realistic. These are dangerous individuals. that was done. My personal pet peeve is the conviction for possession of a weapon isn't considered a violent crime in the consideration of the public safety assessment. Let me just say it again. You're convicted of possessing an AK-47. You're convicted of possessing a bazooka. It doesn't pop up as a violent offense. Now, that's not going to get changed overnight. There's going to be a lot of arguments about that, but that's just the way it is now. So this is not a static item. This is not a static reform. Trust me, we hear the mayor's voice. When the mayor sends a letter or reaches out to my office, we listen. Judge Grant will, from time to time, send out to the judges directives they need to follow. The Attorney General will sometimes send out directives that we need to follow. Director Ambrose is sending out directives that need to be followed. We're all, while we're equally sort of, it appears that we're butting heads, we're all pushing and pulling and having this tension of trying to get a more perfect system. It's not there, but we're trying to get it there.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. And we have another question right here, and then we'll get to you.
Good evening. My name is Natasha Allen. I do appreciate us being brought into the conversation. I do agree with Keisha, however, that these conversations should have been had prior to us discussing the criminal justice reform that was presented to us as a bail reform. Some of us, myself included, had limited knowledge of what it was, so it sounded good in theory, but in practice it is horrible. And I think that at this point, I do appreciate some of what is being said, but I do think that some of it is very,
I'm not
very
sure
vague, and it works for you
why so many people in the community wasn't. I got a question.
I think that
how do we know in the community about this event? Like, how was it publicized?
It's on the calendar, and we post out. You mean about this event? Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't run this event.
Racially
you?
unbiased as you can, where you don't necessarily look
I was
at.
asking if you knew how this event was publicized, because a lot of people are asking me if they wanted to, it was interesting, I guess, at the topic.
I'm just going to support my bishop work.
Okay. So those petitions?
Arrested and incarcerated repeatedly in Newark, New Jersey, kind of think I live here. And for you to say that in regards to not having a person's name or just the racial unbiased, generally, specifically in the black community and some other ethnic races as well, ethnicities I should say, our names do tell people who we are. So I don't think that you were very honest when you, and I'm not saying that overall it doesn't work, but the majority of it is you can't honestly say that you can't, in a large percentage, determine what a person's race is or nationality based on their name, and again, in the propensity where the crime is happening and in the location. It says that we live here, I might be of a certain color and things like that. So we need to be really, really honest about how these things are working. And when we're talking about adding people and numbers and all this, that, and the third, it's not working for lay people. We're the ones who are affected by this. Like we said, our community brothers are being the ones that are affected. I think about with the mayor's initiative with the summer, with the Occupy the Block. There was a guy, I'm wrapping up with this. There was a guy who was arrested on the scene, had a whole argument, made a terroristic threat to the person that he was having a confrontation with. He said, I'll be out in 2 hours. You know what happened? He got out in 2 hours and he came home and killed that guy. But he had prior incidences where he had violent crimes. So it didn't work for him. It didn't work for the person who's deceased. But we had people who are committing crimes. And what the mayor didn't say and what Letitia didn't say is that the brother who had been incarcerated for months, not only was he arrested at 15 years old, he served his youth as well as his adult years in prison to get home and stay home and be a productive member of society, and then to be hit again for possession of a weapon. So when you're saying that that's not a violent crime, it's not necessarily true, and it's not working for black people.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'd like to thank the audience and everyone for coming out tonight. What I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap it up right now. I'm going to turn it over to the mayor. Closing remarks, and then pass it around.
Excuse me, I didn't get to answer my question.
Sorry, ma'am. We already hit the time. I'm sorry. Mayor, would you like to say closing remarks?
I just want to say this. As was Earlier, I think this dialogue should be
So
going
first of
on.
all, they didn't even invite people from the community out to this event. And then the only people who were really allowed to ask questions were people who work very direct and very closely with the mayor. And that's the type of thing that we really have to, stand up against, because the community has a right to ask questions and they have a right to be involved. And that's just not cool.
The leaders of the community and make them responsible for getting people out to these meetings and to these events. Because I certainly could have got dozens and dozens of people out for those meetings, and I think that should, going forward, we need to be able to do that. Go forward, yeah. Oh, yeah?
So thank you. We're gonna wrap up right now.
And you can even see with the corruption, who was the person who said I was too late to ask questions. It was our freeholder. I'm going to show you guys.
Prosecutor Higgins and the lieutenant for giving their time and to this debate. And it is a continuing conversation. If you do want to know more about bail reform, Safer Newark County website has.
That's corruption, and that's not cool.